The Fnaf 2 movie just released, and there have been a variety of opinions shared online. This movie is very controversial, but that's not the reason I'm here today. No, I'm here for the lore. And oh boy does the Fnaf 2 movie deliver. This movie challenged a lot of the community's beliefs, and we'll certainly touch on how much it applies to the games. But for now, let's just jump straight into the crazy world of theorizing. And while you're here, consider subscribing to the amazing channel of Mini Byte Games, where we're solving the lore one insane theory at a time. Also, since it is kinda necessary to discuss the Fnaf 2 movie for this theory, I am obligated to warn you of heavy spoilers in the rest of the video. I highly recommend you watch the movie before this, but if you'd rather not, consider yourself warned. To start, let's lay the foundation by searching the games for any information on a character called the Vengeful Spirit. Why is this important? Well, I'll keep you in suspense for now, but you won't have to wait too long. The Vengeful Spirit was a character introduced rather late into the Fnaf story, solely mentioned in the capstone to the original Click Team games, Ultimate Custom Night, aka UCN. Through voice lines and little Easter eggs in UCN, we learn that we're playing as well-known child killer William Afton. One of the puppet's voice lines indicates that Charlie was at one point scared of the player. We are given no indication of Charlie fearing anyone in the games, except for the man that murdered her outside of Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria. If you set Old Man Consequences, a niche character from Fnaf World, to an AI level of 1 and complete his fishing minigame, you are sent to a red lake and forest. Interestingly, the background audio of this section is very revealing about who we play as. And on top of that, multiple characters have voice lines mentioning a character titled "The One You Should Not Have Killed." Considering this line is directed at our player, that means that whomever we play as has killed someone before. This really narrows down who we play as, and heavily points towards William Afton as our prime suspect. He is to blame for most of the deaths in the games, including Charlie and the kids from Fnaf 1 and 2. And with that setup out of the way, now we can ask the real hot topic question from Ultimate Custom Night. Who is the Vengeful Spirit tormenting Afton? There are many different interpretations of the one you should not have killed. I wasn't kidding when I said this is a hot topic debate. Heck, that's probably an under-exaggeration, honestly. In-game, the Vengeful Spirit is depicted as someone with immense rage towards William Afton, and they orchestrate the world of UCN as a result. Interestingly, Mangle's line referencing the spirit uses the pronoun he, which would indicate that the spirit is male. With that small list of criteria out of the way, let's travel back to the distant year of 2018, when Ultimate Custom Night first released. The initial candidate for the Vengeful Spirit, hot off the new release, was Cassidy, aka the main spirit of Golden Freddy and the 5th victim of the missing children's incident from Fnaf 1. Cassidy Vengeful Spirit is still a very popular theory to this day, and that is for good reason. It certainly has its merits. The name Cassidy is first found in the 4th closet, where the spirit that is implied to possess Bonnie is referred to as Cassidy. However, that's not where the main evidence originates from. No, the true part of this theory comes from the evidence in Ultimate Custom Night that point towards the fact that the Vengeful Spirit either inhabits or connects to Golden Freddy. A lot of focus is put on Golden Freddy throughout the game. The final cutscene of the game for beating 4920 shows Golden Freddy continuously twitching into the darkness. Golden Freddy is the only character with a unique Death Coin interaction, and that interaction literally summons a new animatronic, Fredbear. Looking outside of UCN, the hardest Custom Night challenges in both Fnaf 2 and Sister Location are both titled after Golden Freddy. The games are yelling the connections between the Custom Nights, Golden Freddy, and the Vengeful Spirit. But how does this connect to Cassidy? Well, in the gravestone graphic that you receive in the Lorekeeper ending from Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, you can see 5 graves lined up right next to each other. If only we knew of an incident involving 5 missing kids that the original games focused on. Wait a minute. The names of the 4 kids are well displayed, but the 5th is obscured purposefully. Around the same time as Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator's release, the security logbook came out for theorists to analyze. In the book, a lot of grave drawings and specific callouts of my name are made. The close timing of these products and the direct callout of the missing name on the grave was a dead giveaway of the fact that this book contained the name of the 5th spirit. Through a combination of different pages and numbers found in the book, theorists were able to find a name in the word search: Cassidy, the same name from the 4th closet. It stands to reason that this mysterious 5th kid would fit well with the mysterious 5th animatronic of the group, Golden Freddy. Connecting these 3 entities explains the mysterious nature of the others, both in an in-universe and meta sense. The 5th spirit has always been depicted as more special or unique than the others. They were the focus of the Happiest Day minigames and weren't directly helped by the puppet in Give Gifts Give Life. In Fnaf 3, the 5th spirit was also the leader of the missing children, as seen in the final Follow Me minigame. The other 4 spirits stand by, while the 5th is singled out once more, chasing Afton until he puts on the Spring Bonnie suit and gets spring-locked. Golden Freddy has always been special from the regular animatronics. He doesn't walk around regularly. Instead, he teleports around and acts much more like a ghost than a physical animatronic suit. The week before also contains an ending where Ralph, the phone guy, hears Golden Freddy's voice in his mind, an angry barrage of "It's me," over and over. Sounds like someone who is pretty vengeful to me. The Fredbear connections to Golden Freddy also tie it back to the origins of Fazbear Entertainment, with Spring Bonnie and William Afton. All this setup leads to Ultimate Custom Night, where the 5th MCI spirit gets their revenge as the one you should not have killed, the Golden Freddy spirit of Cassidy. Like I said, there is a reason this interpretation is as popular as it is. However, there is an alternative that keeps the Golden Freddy connections, but supplies even more relevance to the spirit behind the vengeance. What if, instead of a mostly unknown victim of Afton, the Vengeful Spirit is the bite victim from Fnaf 4? This would explain why there is so much significance put on the bite of 83 and the week leading up to the big moment. It would further explain why Fredbear appears in Ultimate Custom Night when you try to Deathcoin Golden Freddy. Cassidy, the separate MCI spirit, has no known connection to Fredbear, but Bite Victim very clearly does. Curse of Dreadbear also displays many connections to the Bite Victim through Dreadbear. In the Game Over screen, Dreadbear has a hand over a set of graves, with the main one being a purple glitchy grave. Almost like Dreadbear, aka the Crying Child, is controlling or looming over William Afton post-death in Ultimate Custom Night. The child in Happiest Day may not even be Cassidy, considering how the room is set up as a near perfect reversal of Fredbear's with the big bite. I went into this in a lot more detail in my last video, and even possibly solved how the bite victim was reanimated as Golden Freddy, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. There is always one major issue with this idea, that being that Afton didn't really kill the bite victim. We see the bite of 83, and I don't think anyone's arguing that this is William Afton. And that would be a great point if we didn't hear Bite Victim's heartbeat in the next minigame. He lived past the bite in a coma. I think this gives the perfect excuse to blame Afton. We know from Sister Location's maps and cameras, as well as the story Didophobia, that Afton was likely conducting experiments relating to the bite victim's life. I think it's fair to argue that Afton also did experiments using his dead body, especially when a minigame in Curse of Dreadbear is about reanimating Dreadbear and giving him a new brain in research and development. William promises that he will put the bite victim back together and then immediately kills him so that the experiments can begin. He used his son's tragic accident as an excuse to experiment on others and learn about the spiritual rules of Fnaf. I think this gives more significance to the Vengeful Spirit in the games, rather than a 5th MCI spirit that is never elaborated on directly. We have to assume their role in the minigames, and why they'd be vengeful in the first place. There is an idea that the bite victim's name is Cassidy, and still fits the role of the 5th MCI victim, although I'm not fully convinced on that yet. And now, we have one final main candidate for the one you shouldn't have killed, Andrew. Everyone loves Andrew, the book's exclusive character that only has a connection to the games through a questionably canon Fazbear Frights game. Each Fazbear's Fright book in the series ends with a small part of a larger story, referred to as the Stitchwraith Stingers. In these stories, Andrew inhabits the body of the Stitchwraith with Jake, and Andrew has a very strong hatred for William. I got into his soul, made sure he couldn't move on when he should have died. I remember I wanted to make him suffer, the way he made me suffer. If that doesn't sound like the exact setup for Ultimate Custom Night following the FFPS fire, I don't know what does. The Vengeful Spirit doesn't allow Afton to move on, and keeps him trapped in a never-ending nightmare against more than 50 reminders of his past. In a Steam post when speaking on the Fazbear Frights books, Cawthon said that some of these stories connect directly to the games, and you'd think that the most important throughline of the series would be important enough for the games, solving UCN. Well, the real issue with that logic comes from the vague wording from Scott. Something being directly connected to something else doesn't mean that they take place in the same universe. It's very likely that Scott meant for us to use the more connected stories as parallels. Regardless, I don't think it's fair to assume what Scott meant by this message, and the games have not tried to make Andrew, nor the stories themselves, canon to the main timeline. The Into the Pit game didn't make its canonicity to the games clear at all, and makes the timeline more stretchy, whether you try to put it before or after Fnaf 3. And even the appearance of the Stitchwraith itself makes no sense at this point in the Fazbear Frights timeline, which would seem to indicate that keeping the timeline consistent for the games was not a focus during development. None of the Steel Wool games have acknowledged Andrew in any capacity, and have only leaned into the bite victim interpretation through Curse of Dreadbear. On top of this, a direct setting of the stories into the games was heavily discouraged by Secret of the Mimic, considering the obliteration of Tales games. It also just means that Ultimate Custom Night is impossible to solve with the games themselves to this day, which isn't very good writing. Wait, maybe Andrew is the Vengeful Spirit after all. As I've laid out, all these candidates have their different pros and cons, but now it's time for a new contender to enter the ring. Alright, here we go. What if the marionette is the Vengeful Spirit? If you've seen the movie, I hope you can see where I'm coming from. At the very start of Fnaf 2, we get to see a side of Charlie that is very similar to how people perceive her role in the games, saving a potential victim of Afton and sacrificing her own life in the process. However, after this moment, the puppet's role diverges heavily from common interpretation. The rest of the movie mainly focuses on Mike and Vanessa trying to stop the puppet from enacting revenge on the parents that did nothing to help. It is explained by Vanessa that Charlie's soul was stuck in the final emotion she felt before she died: rage. In the movie, she only has one goal now: vengeance. Charlie even recites one of the puppet's most iconic death voice lines from Ultimate Custom Night.
I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way.
Heck, she even wills the other animatronics to do her bidding and act out her revenge. This is just like Fnaf 2 and Ultimate Custom Night. The phone guy tells us in Fnaf 2 that something caused the animatronics to act unusual and aggressive. Possibly the marionette that is always thinking? UCN is about the Vengeful Spirit, enacting their revenge on Afton by using 50 animatronics. What about evidence in the games? I've gone over how direct the connections are in the movie universe, but we're here to talk about the game's timeline. To start, something that is consistent between both continuities is the requirement of a music box to keep the puppet at bay. It was always questionable why the marionette would attack a seemingly innocent security guard in Fnaf 2 if it was merely a protector of the other spirits. After all, it is described as always thinking, and Charlie in UCN boasts about how
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
the puppet specifically needs this measure in place due to its increased intelligence and rage. This would also further explain the necessity of Lefty in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. If the puppet is stuck on vengeance, then Henry would need to build a vessel to eternally soothe and trap the puppet. The marionette's presence in Lefty during the fire of FFPS could also lend credibility to this interpretation, as it would give the puppet easy access to Afton once it was freed from Lefty during the fire. Perhaps the reason we don't get a shot of Lefty during the fire is because she escaped Lefty and found Afton soon after, bringing him to Ultimate Custom Night. In the promotion for the second movie, an interesting focus was put on Night Marione. Night Marione is obviously a dark reflection of the puppet, which can play into the idea of the dark nature with the Vengeful Spirit. Charlie helps the innocent spirits, but also has this darker side, attempting to enact revenge on Afton. Interestingly, Night Marione also has a continued presence in the Steel Wool games, potentially showing the puppet's goal of bringing Afton back to UCN after he escaped through Glitch Trap and Burn Trap. And you want to know the real kicker that ties Night Marione, the puppet, and the Vengeful Spirit together? Night Marione is the face of Ultimate Custom Night. No matter what device you're on, Scott specifically chose the face of the game to be the dark reflection of the puppet. I wonder what Scott meant by this. And with that, we solved it. The FNAF 2 movie just gave us the answer to Ultimate Custom Night's Vengeful Spirit after we missed the correct details for too long, right? Well, no, we really didn't. What was the error I made in my logic then? Unfortunately, it goes back to the very foundation of this theory. I used the FNAF movie lore as a basis for a theory on the game's timeline. I bet you already know that the FNAF movies are not direct translations of the games onto the silver screen, but you may not know just how much they diverge from each other. If you can't think of an example of this issue, just watch the very beginning of the FNAF 2 movie. After a short countdown to the title reveal for the movie, FNAF 2 immediately shows us the year that Charlie died, 1982. This immediately separates the movie from the games in a major way, as a book release from this year made 1982 an impossible year for Charlie to die. Ticket to Fun, a kit containing Freddy's memorabilia, has a section dedicated to discussing a security bracelet feature put in place at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. From the security puppet minigame in FFPS, we see the children with these bracelets, and it is a part of the Marionette's programming to look out for Charlotte with the green bracelet. This book heavily implies then that Charlie died at Freddy's, given Fredbear's isn't implied to have the same system. There's just one issue with that fact. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was established in 1983, one whole year after Charlie died in the movie universe. Immediately, these two universes are separated. Even more examples crop up as you further examine the two FNAF worlds. The movies have two Michaels, a Vanessa born earlier than in the games, and a set of withered animatronics that are separate from the classics. You can try to work around some of these issues and implement them into the games, but you're fighting a losing battle and weighing the movie information over that from the games. This feeds into the bigger discussion on how applicable non-game content information is to the game's timeline. Obviously, there are levels to this, and it really depends from title to title, but specific movie details are not very comparable to the games. From my viewpoint, movie information should only really be used to further support theories that have a good base within the games themselves. In this instance, Puppet Vengeful Spirit was only considered due to the movie's existence, and wouldn't have been an idea otherwise. The basis for Puppet Vengeful Spirit is mostly gone when you remove the movies, and the theory has to ignore in-game evidence to support the movie evidence. For a more humorous take on implementing movie lore information into the games, I have invited Theffy, a fellow FNAF tuber, to speak on the matter.
Hello, I'm Theffy, and thank you so much Minibite for having me. Now, here's my opinion on using things that happen in the movies as evidence for theories about the games. We should absolutely do it. It's gotta happen. We're gonna do it. Everything's canon. I say this because I have come up with a theory regarding events in the film that may connect to the games. Here's my theory. I call it Clothesline, like Andrew Line or Stitch Line, you know, one of those timeline names. But no, what happens at the end of the Fnaf 2 movie? Michael Afton runs out of the house and gets clotheslined by Jeremiah, Mike's friend. Now, Jeremiah obviously is the movie version of Jeremy the Bonnie Bully, who would obviously be Michael's friend in-game. Now, is this implying that at some point after the bite of 83, Michael and Jeremy got into an altercation which led to Jeremy clotheslining Michael, and that was the last time they ever spoke? But there's more. You see what happens at the very end of the film. Michael is not there, and he's dropped his badge. Now, if you ask me, William in-game seems like the father that would make his son work underage, child labor and that good stuff. Is it possible that he was working at Freddy's as a minor, 15 whatever, and if he was working at Freddy's as a teenager, it's possible that he could have still had a relationship with Jeremy at that time. So when Jeremy clotheslines Michael, he would have been wearing the security badge, which he then drops. Jeremy then picks up the badge and uses it to become the FNAF 2 guard. Prove me wrong. You can't prove it. Clothesline theory is the theory of all time, and I'm so thankful to Minibite for letting me share the truth. Subscribe to my channel, everyone. Theffy out. Bye.
Thanks for stepping in, Theffy, and all of you. Yes, even you. Be sure to check out his channel and videos after this one. The link to his channel will be in the description below. They're worth the watch. So, is Puppet Vengeful Spirit possible in the games? Maybe, but it heavily relies on the movies and ignores all the game's evidence pointing towards Golden Freddy. I didn't even mention how the puppet isn't even vengeful towards Afton in the movie, but instead the parents. Another disconnect from the games. Personally, I'm sticking with the bite victim. The Dreadbear and Golden Freddy connections are just too strong for me to ignore. If you have any thoughts on the Vengeful Spirit or the FNAF 2 movie, you can leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to read them. And with all that said, this is gonna be Minibite Games heading out. See you guys next time.